When was the last time you heard anything about the Disney Channel? Like with Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, it was common to hear constant news about them even when you began growing up and stopped watching them as much. Whether that news was good or bad, mostly bad. With the Disney Channel, I honestly can't remember the last time it was considered relevant past, I want to say 2017 actually. And that's only because I distinctly remember everyone complaining about Jake Paul being on the network. What a sad chapter of history that was. So what's new with the Disney Channel these days? I don't know, how's your grandma doing? The Disney Channel used to be iconic, one of the most popular networks on television. Even with its main focus being live-action programming, which isn't exactly one of Disney's strong suits, it quickly made a name for itself with some very popular and widely beloved shows. So what happened? Obviously Disney Channel is not completely dead in the same way you'd consider a zombie as not being completely alive, and unlike Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, I can't say the network has lost much of its original identity over time due to bad decision making. No, Disney Channel is dead in comparison to literally everything else. It doesn't have the same, albeit dying, cultural relevance as CN and Nick, despite somehow averaging higher viewership, and there's also the fact that its main competition is no longer those two networks, but now itself. And when you notice that the channel has been completely discontinued in most parts of the world because of that competition, it really puts a lot of things into perspective. The reasons for the death of the Disney Channel are not very complex, so I'll try and keep this as brief as I can. There are definitely a multitude of reasons, but they're pretty simple to grasp. Disney Channel is pretty famous for its insanely long list of sitcoms, many of which are cult classics and many of which are actually some of the best TV ever made. I will not be taking criticism on that. While the Disney Channel also had its fair share of very popular and extremely good animated shows, Proud Family, Kim Possible, Phineas and Ferb, Gravity Falls, the channel was most well known for its live action programming. There were a lot of sitcoms. And they began to blend together after a while. What a lot of people haven't really gathered is that a lot of Disney Channel's success was kind of a fluke, since their business strategy consisted of random bullshit go, and it became obvious with how homogenous many of their sitcoms became. Disney being Disney fell into the pattern of giving many popular stars on Radio Disney their own TV shows, which saw a massive amount of success, and eventually you were able to notice a pattern with many of their sitcoms that aired on the Disney Channel. Mainly that many of them were incredibly similar. Aspiring young pop stars, teens in school, a family thrust into wacky situations. If you have any experience with the channel at all, you can get what I'm putting down. While many of these shows were successful, especially Hannah Montana, which only convinced them to keep trying with this approach, as the years went on you could really feel how homogenous many of the shows were getting. And this issue only got worse due to the sheer insane number of crossovers the channel would produce. Crossovers in the world of television are actually my favorite kind of crossovers. Seeing different TV shows collide is usually pretty cool. But man, did the novelty wear off fast with the Disney Channel. That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana, Wizards on Deck with Hannah Montana, Good Luck Charlie on Shake It Up, That's So Raven on Bunked, Lab Rats vs Mighty Med, Jesse on Austin and Ally. I mean, for the love of God, half of these crossovers were with 3 different TV shows, and with a lot of new releases lacking the same charm, quality, and audience lure that made many of the network's classics so popular, the network began to lose a lot of its appeal. Disney Channel got very popular way too quickly, and I don't think they were that capable of keeping up. So one day a Disney executive, likely shoving bath salts up their arse, thought it would be a great idea to look at the network's catalog and go, hey, boys don't like this shit! And that, my friends, is how DisneyXD came to be. There's been a bit of a discussion about the Disney Channel mostly catering towards teenage girls that I really don't agree with. Like, yeah, sure, some of the shows on there you could argue are mostly targeted towards girls, but most of the programming on the Disney Channel mostly consisted of teen sitcoms, and some of them just happened to have female protagonists. Hate to pull the sexism card on this, but the more I look back at this decision, the more sexist it looks to me, but I digress. Disney realized that the Disney Channel was appealing to young girls more than young boys, allegedly, and needed a way to bring back their young male audience. Thus, they created an entirely new channel, DisneyXD, crafted from the ashes of the late Toon Disney. I love looking back at the incredibly aggressive, extreme marketing that DisneyXD had. It was so blatantly desperate to grab the attention of boys. There was nothing Disney-like about how DisneyXD was marketed either. Like, they went all in on the edge to the point that it wraps back around to being really charming. I do miss this era, as misguided as it was. With the creation of DisneyXD came a lot more boy-focused sitcoms and a lot more boy-centric shows from the Disney Channel were moved over. I didn't really watch any of the sitcoms on DisneyXD. Again, that was what I was always watching Disney Channel for, and from what I've heard, they weren't anything to write home about overall. People obviously had their favorites. I mean,
Yo, I'm gonna let you finish, but ding dong.
But Disney XD never really had a sweet life of Zack and Cody or Hannah Montana, you know? Then came Disney's weird relationship towards their animated shows and then just being dumped onto Disney XD, but it was super inconsistent. As previously said, a lot of boy-centric Disney shows were dumped onto Disney XD, which also included some of their cartoons, but everything about how it was handled confused the absolute f*** out of me even back when I was 10 years old. Like, I don't even think it was a ratings thing, because Gravity Falls was absolutely crushing it with ratings while it was airing on the Disney Channel, and then got sent to Disney XD for its second season where the ratings dropped pretty significantly. These are still great numbers, but if the strategy was to give Gravity Falls a wider reach with a more mature audience the network was aiming for, then this was a massive miss. Phineas and Ferb, on the other hand, was just allowed to air on Disney Channel and Disney XD simultaneously, until its last season where it got sent to Disney XD. Star vs. the Forces of Evil initially premiered its first episode on the Disney Channel, but then the rest of season 1 leading all the way up to the end of season 3 aired exclusively on Disney XD. Then suddenly, for the 4th season, they put it back on the Disney Channel, and this is without mentioning the fact that Disney XD's viewership was not as great as the Disney Channel, and for many shows, the network itself was a death sentence. It became Disney's equivalent to Nickelodeon's Nicktoons channel, where they send any show that isn't SpongeBob or Loud House to die a slow and painful death. Except with Disney XD, there was no obvious criteria like low ratings for your show being sent there. None of it made any sense, and it only served to harm both channels in the long run. If the executives really sold the Disney Channel mostly appealing to girls as a bad thing, then why the f*** is your answer to that making a completely different channel and trying to build a new audience from the ground up? Doesn't it make more sense to have all the Disney shows under one umbrella? Like, I'm gonna be honest, with the exception of a handful of shows, most Disney Channel shows appeal to the whole family and not just girls. But if they really did argue about the network appealing to girls only, then surely the solution is to just make more shows that have a wider appeal and then put them on the same network, right? All this did was completely split the viewership, which harmed both channels. Towards the end of the 2010s, Disney XD finally started crashing and burning. Not only did the marketing reach levels of desperation I never thought I'd see from Disney, like making a bunch of video game shows apparently that featured prominent gaming YouTubers from Disney's YouTube network, like come on little bro, you're doing too much. And when Gravity Falls, DuckTales, and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, the three shows that were basically headlining the damn network, came to an end, / moved to the Disney Channel, there was basically no incentive for anyone to keep watching. The network withered and withered and withered until eventually it just ceased to exist internationally. Most countries do not have Disney XD anymore, it's dead. The only countries that still have it are the United States, Canada, and Poland, I think. Everyone else just got rid of it because it's completely f***ing worthless, especially with the launch of Disney+. Speaking of which, I touched on this point in my video on Disney fatigue, so I'll be paraphrasing from that section here. Call me RGG the way I don't know, reuse my assets. Disney Plus, while initially a rather neat idea for a streaming service, has done an insane amount of damage to Disney's brand and the performance of their movies and their TV shows on the Disney Channel and Disney XD. Disney Plus is a one-stop shop for basically everything Disney with very few exceptions. From incredibly popular mainstream content to very obscure parts of Disney's 100-year history, basically everything is here. And while Disney doesn't tend to immediately release a new TV shows at the same time they're put on streaming like they do with movies, which causes people to be less incentivized to go see them in theaters and wasting their money, streaming is still completely curb-stomping TV, especially when it comes to animation. Children's TV is basically dead these days, it's why I started making this series of videos, and while they all have their own unique contributing factors for their downfall, the main thing they all have in common is that streaming is killing them. Before you could just sit your kids in front of the TV and have them mindlessly watch whatever was on there, but now that you have the ability to choose whatever you want to watch at any time, it becomes a far less appealing option, therefore incentivizing people not to bother with watching TV, not paying for cable, and just choosing a couple streaming services they can pay for monthly. And with Disney, this issue is accentuated because, well, they're Disney, one of the largest brands on the planet, creators of their childhood. They have such a massive and rich library of shows and movies as well as their own original programming, exclusive to this service of theirs. You see where I'm going with this. Disney putting the vast majority of their content in one easy-to-use place for about $10 a month is very appealing to most people. You couple this with most of Disney's newer shows on cable not being very appealing to the average viewer these days, along with the fact that after a while they'll just be on Disney Plus anyway, and there's really no reason to watch the Disney Channel at all. There's a better on-demand Disney Channel right there that'll give you everything you want and more for $10 a month. What's there to lose by no longer paying for cable? Disney Plus is the biggest reason for why no one watches the Disney Channel anymore. I mean, duh, obviously, but looking at the reasons for its decline before the service wiped away any reasons to keep watching it really puts into perspective how much of a vastly preferable option it is. While the channel has appealed to people of all ages throughout its many eras, one thing is for certain, the Disney Channel was mostly popular with young teens. I don't think that's incredibly controversial to say given the shows that were being aired on the channel. While the network still has viewers, it's pretty clear that they're now aiming at a much younger demographic these days than they used to, which has definitely alienated many of the remaining hardcore fans of the network, because yes, those do exist. I remember announcing this video and having some people be very confused as to why the Disney Channel was getting a video like this, and not to be a dick or anything, but I think it's just denial, because anyone looking at the current state of the channel and comparing it to Disney Plus can tell you that this thing barely has a pulse. This channel was a big part of many people's lives growing up, and it was iconic for many justified reasons. One could argue that the Disney Channel was a big part of the 2000s the same way Nickelodeon was a big part of the 90s, but the appeal towards its original demographic is gone, despite not really losing much of its identity. There's also the fact that compared to around 10 years ago, Disney is not as beloved and popular as they once were, especially with teens. Whether that's people growing up, whether that's more and more people being exposed to the company's huge piles of dirty laundry thanks to the internet, or just because of how unfavorably the brand is viewed by a lot of people nowadays, you're the judge on that one. But it's definitely not a stretch to say that the Disney Channel is no longer an appealing option for its original target audience or longtime fans, who can both get their fix of classic Disney shows from the network on Disney Plus and can get their fix for shows that are geared towards them from a variety of different options. The future of Disney Channel does not look particularly bright, and given it's been shut down in most countries, it's only a matter of time before the network ceases to exist. It doesn't bring in nearly as many viewers as it used to, and unless streaming suddenly goes under, there's just no reason to watch it. Apologies if this video was a lot more straightforward and far shorter than my other videos on the deaths of cartoon channels, but the death of Disney Channel is a much simpler story to tell than that of Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. Maybe I would have had more to say if I had the same number of memories of the channel that I did with those two, but despite me watching Disney Channel and DisneyXD a fair bit, they just never really appealed to me the same way CN and Nick did, other than Gravity Falls obviously, but I don't think I need to say that. But yeah, that's the end of the video. Rip and piss Disney Channel, at least you gave us Zack and Cody. Play Yakuza.